Welcome back to the One Shot Show. My name is Matt.
My name is Mark.
And we improvise every single one of these intros. Today we are, in fact...
It's painfully obvious.
Yeah, thank you, Pain. We're talking about improvisation, and we're talking about improvising great plot hooks.
We are.
So I think there's a bit of definition we ought to put into this bad boy first. What's a plot hook?
A plot hook is something that you will tell to your players, and then they will have a decision, ideally, to follow up on this or move on from it. And if they follow up on it, that can open up a whole story that also, ideally, you have prepared, but sometimes you simply don't. We are specifically talking about improvising plots. This is not as simple as improvising an NPC or improvising a location. This is you coming up with a whole story in real time as you react to your players' choices. Do you have to do this often? You talk about the fact that you have built these huge immersive worlds. You've got everything planned out. Are you finding yourself improvising in your games a lot?
Almost 100% of the time. Because
the veil of illusion is lifted.
Exactly, because when I say I've got everything planned out, what I mean is I've thrown down a map and it looks about right, and I've built the general shape of things. If there's key details and unique things about the world, maybe the world has 2 moons and that affects the weather patterns or something. Yeah, I've done all that. I've done all that crunchy world building. I've done all of that sort of stuff to deliver the most robust platform that I possibly can, and from there, I'm drawing the next panel as my players are stood in the one previous, all the way down to the wider plots, right? What I have at the back of my mind is a grab bag of things that are happening in this world at various different scales. And inevitably, my players will get tangled up in one or more of the bigger ones. And as it happens, when you're on the big single plot thread, you don't care about the others, and they immediately fall away from me. And then I can put all of my energy into, drawing as many frames in advance as I possibly can. The way I almost like to think about it is like, imagine if Harry starts his first year at Hogwarts, and instead of picking up on the Voldemort thing, he just picks up on wanting revenge on the Dursleys, and he spends 7 years getting revenge on the Dursleys. And that's the big picture thing, right? It's like that. You just show up for your first year at Wizarding School. You don't know what kind of wacky hijinks you're going to get drawn into that's going to dominate the next 7 years of your life and 7 books of a series.
Now, my personal opinion is that would have made a pretty trash story, but I think something we need to really define for our listeners here is what is a good plot hook and what is a bad plot hook. And
a good plot hook is Voldemort, and a bad plot hook is you spend 7 books getting revenge on the Dursleys.
And something, moving away from any media written by transphobes, let's say that I say, hey, I've got a bunch of rats in my basement.
Sorry, I was meant to yes and you there. Oh, my bad.
No. You hate yes and, famously, but that was the whole plot hook. What can we do to improve that?
What you actually do is you don't say there's rats in my basement. You say there's an awful smell and an awful noise.
Ooh, we're going to add some mystery. We're not going to give our players all the information at once.
And now a couple of things happen. They get onto the basement and there's just a couple of rats there. And, maybe your players are... Maybe your party are sort of savvy, cynical, mercenary types who are like, it's just a bunch of rats. And then the terrified old lady is like, I can pay. And they're like, well, if you can pay, then I guess we got to deal with this rat problem. And then halfway through dealing with the rat problem, here's this weird gap in the wall that's clearly where the rats have been coming from. Make a perception check. Oh, you rolled quite high because you're, an investigator type character. There's the sound of rushing water coming from through this gap, right? You just sort of building it out in layers and layers and layers, right? We talk about improvising great plot hooks. That was me improvising just then. You can just do that in your game as well. And then maybe it turns out there's this secret society of giant mutant rat folk in the sewers.
Amazing. Or maybe this kindly old landlady who wanted you to clear out some rats in the sewer. As you go down into her basement, you hear the door lock behind you. You hear her laughing, and congratulations, you're now trapped in a hag's den.
Or, I tell you what, I've got an even, because look, let's build on that idea. Let me yes and you for a second. Yeah, the old lady is secretly a hag who has constant beef with the rat folk who keep undoing her plans, and she has taken up residence in this unassuming little hovel in the middle of a city, just trying to get some muscle to go take out the Rat King on her behalf because she has an ancient contract that she's bound by. And now what happens is we get to the end of taking out all the mutant rat folk. The players find out that their employer was secretly a hag. Now they decide, do we also want to deal with a hag?
And I think that's a really beautiful example of taking an idea that is just so simple and stereotypical, rats in the basement. And then that's a perfect, my opinion is, that's a perfectly fine plot hook. There's a very clear beginning goal. Your players can say, I'll jump on this, or I'm not interested. And if they do jump on that, you're not locked into just doing that. You could do exactly what we just did and be like, I'm going to add some more things and add some more things and add some more things and improvise more plot as it comes to me, and as I see my players continuing to be interested and invested in this, and just coming up with problem after problem until we're like, I feel like we're done, we can move on.
And if you want, you don't have to move on as well. That's the beauty of it. You can just keep going bigger and bigger and bigger. And you may be asking yourself something like, well, what about foreshadowing? And I'm going to tell you right now, your players have overactive imaginations, and they will imagine shadows that were never there. They will do that for you. Look, it's great if you can foreshadow something. And dude, half the time, I sit there and I come up with an idea, and I'm like, damn, that's a good idea. That's a cool idea. And then I realize I said something 2 weeks ago that's going to make it sound like I planned this. And I'm like, now I've got to do it. That's perfect. I accidentally cast that shadow for myself in advance. And it's not because it's not because I just like stumble into this thing. It's because I'm always trying to create these simulated, immersive, realistic worlds. Because I'm always going for that simulated realism, it means it's very easy for me to just drop something else in there that seems pretty cohesive with the rest of the simulation.
You're making a really good point.
The simulation is going to make it seem like that was there all along.
The more you know about your own world, whatever imaginary world you're in, and particularly in the world of tabletop role-playing games that have often established law or mechanics, the better you know the system, the better you know the world that you've been given, the more easily you can fill that in with different things. If you're making stuff up 100% of the time for everything, it is going to be such a huge mental strain.
100%. And that's why I said right at the start of this, the big focus for me is usually on that very robust world building, that very robust platform. And when I say world building, I am including some of those basic big stakes things, right? They're always there by default. My current big scale campaign that I'm running, one of the big things I laid out about it is all gods are fundamentally separated from the mortal plane on purpose because some of the gods got too destructive and it was a whole big issue, and all the good gods are long dead. This means a couple of things. First of all, for my world building, it means that religion, people don't dislike it, they don't outlaw it, but there's a bit of a hinky relationship to religion. We put up with holy men who can do a bit of healing and medicine because that's still a necessary function, but we don't love somebody who's trying to poke around and understand how gods get their power. It also means that the easiest big stakes story to get wrapped up in is going to relate to the gods being separated off from the mortal plane. Now, whether that's because the party encounters a cult that is trying to remove that barrier, whether it's because they encounter somebody who is trying to heal and fix the gods so that the barrier can be removed, whether it's because they meet somebody who, given the absence of gods, is trying to ascend and fill that niche as a monotheistic deity on this side of the barrier. Doesn't matter what it is, but it's obviously going to relate to that because I built that into the world.
So, something that you've touched on and that I know that I have said many, many times.
I'm just going to interrupt myself right there. If any of my players just heard me say that, pretend you didn't hear me say that.
The thing is, if I'm sitting down to play in a game where I know the gods have been torn away from this fantasy world, my buy-in as a player will be like, we're probably going to get involved in that. And if someone says to me, hey, there are rats in my basement, I'm already probably playing a guy with some...
Rat God! Where's the rat God?
with some swords, with a bow. I'm ready to kill some rats. I'm here to do some things. Your players want to play the game. They want to explore. They want to kill stuff. They want to interact with people. And hooking players into plots isn't that hard. And making good plots, plots that they will remember, by being creative, interacting with them, finding out kind of what they want and what they need, giving those players a chance to really shine at what they're good at often. And if you're stuck, just tie it into their backstory. Hopefully you've got a bunch of information about like, oh, maybe their parents were kidnapped by goblins. Suddenly, Goblin's going to show up, recognizes the player, and you have immediate personal investment.
I often talk about how the players and the GM are often at times telling two different stories. The GMs rather the players are telling the story of, you know, their characters in the party and their backstories and how they tie into the world. Yeah. And you know, you want to put things in front of them that help expand on that and deliver these satisfying outcomes for the things they've laid into their backstories. But you're also telling this other story. Yeah. You're often telling that big stake story, that cosmic story, the story of empires crumbling, the story of, you know, dark gods being born and all of these things. And as you say, oftentimes the trick to aligning both of those, and I think personally, those two things should never be all the way aligned until the closing stretches of your campaign, assuming it has a finite endpoint, which, you know, I think many ought to. The way you do that is have it kind of tie into certain characters' backstories. But I'd also caution, don't have it tie into every player's backstory. Yeah. If someone's backstory is, I'm trying to find my long-lost brother, you can have the long-lost brother be a member of the cult that's trying to summon this dark god. Or maybe it's just their brother. Yeah. If every single player's backstory happens to tie into the wider story, we talk about realism and immersion, that's often the point where they'll start to go, well, that's awfully freaking convenient. They probably won't call bullshit, but I think there's a better way to do it, and that is to take that mixed approach. All right, it just happened to be that your brother ran away because you were too young to realize this, but your father wasn't the best man, father to you. But then this other guy, this scholar who's been expelled from universities for, you know, poking around at things he shouldn't be, yeah, that's going to tie into the wider backstory.
I've got some strong opinions about this.
Please share.
Every single player at your table is the main character for themselves. And you are playing as well, but your character is your world. And often your story will only work if all these players become invested in your world, but that takes time and that takes investment. And something that I have done that has worked spectacularly well is every player who sat down at my table for a campaign, I took a piece of their backstory and I put it somewhere into the world. Not as the A-plot. It's not all tied into whatever main bad guy I had. But by pursuing those little B-plots, as every single one of them had some unresolved personal issues, over the months of playing and them resolving those personal stories, they became invested in the world, and then they all came together for the big fight at the end.
Yes, but...
Go on.
As we're going back to that tool.
Go on.
I actually think there's a secret third thing that you are doing there.
Hot take.
So, yeah, they are totally invested in their character. Their character is the main character, the most important thing in their world. Yep. You get to play the whole world and the whole setting. That's the most important thing to you. Yep. But I think once you reach the more advanced stages of a campaign, once it reaches a kind of narrative maturity, is the term I like to use, actually... players may no longer care as much about their own character. They become invested in the story of the party within the world, which includes them, but is not exclusively them. And this is why you can have player characters die and have that player write up a new one and build them in so that they can basically just pick up and keep playing the party story, because that becomes the thing they care about the most. And that's why I think you can get away with not having every single thing tie into the big A plot. Yeah, I think you're right. You should tie them mostly into B plots and other important things. There should be a resolution and catharsis. Yeah. But the level of that catharsis can differ quite significantly by the time you get to it, depending on how invested that player is, in the party story. And I've even had players who, of their own volition, have basically totally abandoned their own character's main story because they're no longer interested in finding their long-lost brother. They've gone, well, I don't know, he ran away when I was 3 and he was 15, and now that I think about it, my father wasn't the best man, but the world's gonna end.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's almost getting into a whole different topic of like how to change the focus of a massive long-form story. Have you got anything else to say about plot hooks?
Nope. I do, yeah, of course I do. And I've talked about this before because you talk about players being willing and interested in engaging in something you put in front of them. I talked about
player buy-in?
Incredible. And
First time I've done that.
I've used this term before, but in my campaigns, my players are a fish in a sea of hooks. Because I have these big, wide worlds with all kinds of stories going on, all kinds of wide stakes, my players decide which ones they get wrapped into. They basically decide which hook they're going to go take a nibble at, and then it's my job to reel them in and make it compelling. And I've had times where I've, gone to grab the bite, and they've gone, actually, this isn't really it, and they go in this other direction, and we sort of, sometimes we just swim along for a bit, and then we catch on to the main one, but at the end of the day, the fish is hungry and it wants to eat.
So our final advice for improvising great plot hooks is just throw as many fucking plot hooks at your players as you possibly can, and they'll bite the one they're interested in.
Exactly. They absolutely will, and there may even be multiple ones that they are interested in, and then they're going to decide which one they want to pursue, and that's even better for buy-in because they feel like they've had a say in the matter.
You have given them the illusion of agency.
I wouldn't even call it an illusion. If I have 2 stories that they could pursue and they pick one, then it doesn't matter that they didn't pick the other one. They feel satisfied that they've picked the one.
I think that's a fantastic place to end the episode. I think that's the best advice we've had all episode.
I think that's maybe the best advice we've ever had. Ever. I think that just about does it. That's been the One Shot Show, and we'll see you next week. If you like what you just heard, feel free to support us on Patreon. Every little bit helps. Go to patreon.com/oneshotshow.